If you still think Databricks is just a lakehouse company, I hate to break it to you, but you are living in 2024. They have just raised a strategic funding round at a staggering, almost absurd $188 billion valuation. That isn't data storage money. That is, we want to be the unified operating system for the Agentic Era money. Industry-wide vibe shift. We are officially moving past the hype of tokenmaxxing, which is just a polite term for burning millions of dollars throwing the biggest, most expensive frontier models at simple tasks, and moving into valuemaxxing. Today, it's all about ROI, getting the absolute best business outcome per dollar of compute. When we are breaking down the massive wave of announcements from the 2026 Data plus AI Summit, we look at how Databricks plans to kill traditional ETL once and for all, how their new Genie Ontology is fixing the context gap that makes traditional RAG fail, and what their new SpaceX partnership means for native model access. But we aren't just staying in the clouds. We're also doing a critical, unsexy dive into some major security and privilege overhauls hitting Unity Catalog this August. If you don't audit these changes now, your pipelines and workspace entitlements are going to break. Let's get into it. Selectively. Let's start with the context gap. If you've tried building enterprise AI pilots over the last couple of years, you already know the dirty secret. Most of them are functionally useless. They fail because of what Databricks CEO Ali Ghodsi calls the context problem. Traditional retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, tries to solve this by dumping a bunch of PDFs into a vector database. But your business doesn't run on PDFs. It runs on structured, messy, constantly changing SQL data. When your AI doesn't know that active user was redefined in Q3, or that EMEA reports in euros, but the board deck converts to US dollars, it doesn't say, I don't know. It just hallucinates with supreme confidence. Enter Genie Ontology. This is Databricks' new self-improving semantic brain, and it is easily one of the most strategically important announcements of the entire summit. Instead of you manually writing static rules, Genie Ontology continuously crawls your tables, queries, dashboards, and Slack channels to map out what your data actually means. It uses a PageRank style algorithm to weigh definitions based on authority and usage. It feeds directly into Unity Catalog, meaning your AI agents finally have the same business context as your human analysts. But giving agents a brain is only half the battle. If they have to wait for overnight ETL pipelines to get their data, they're already obsolete. This brings us to the absolute holy grail of the 2026 summit, the death of the 40-year-old wall between transactional and analytical databases. Historically, you had OLTP for live operations, like Postgres, and OLAP for analysis, like Databricks. The bridge between them was ETL. And let's be honest, ETL is the expensive, fragile duct tape of the data world. Databricks is killing it with Lakebase and LTAP, Lake Transactional Analytical Processing. Letterbase is a serverless, fully managed, Postgres-compatible database built right into the platform. It features Git-style database branching, a massive quality of life upgrade they inherited from their Neon acquisition, allowing you to spin up a clone of a production database in sub-seconds for safe testing. Under the LTAP framework, Lakebase writes transactional data directly to Unity Catalog in OpenDelta and Iceberg formats. Analytical engines read that exact same storage layer. No ETL, no data duplication, no lag. If an AI agent writes a transaction to Lakebase, it's instantly queryable by your analytics engine. One copy of the data governed by one security model. This architectural shift unlocks what Databricks is calling vibe coding through serverless micro apps. Historically, building a lightweight internal app for a specific department was a non-starter because of the overhead. You had to provision always-on infrastructure and worry about security. Spaces, admins set up a single governance boundary once. Developers can then use Genie App Builder to describe an app in plain English, and the system generates a working web app. Because these run as serverless micro apps on micro VMs, they scale all the way down to 0 when idle. If no one is using that custom procurement tool on the weekend, it costs you exactly $0. To tie this all together, Databricks has supercharged Agentbricks, their developer platform that has already seen over 100,000 agents built. They've added a secure sandbox for code execution, a meta orchestration layer called Omnigent, and, in a massive nod to the hardware side of the ecosystem, a partnership with SpaceX to bring Grok models natively into the platform. And when you want to share these agents, you aren't locked into the Databricks ecosystem. They've teamed up with the Linux Foundation to launch Open Sharing, the evolution of Delta sharing. Now you can share not just raw data, but trained models, agent skills, and full Genie agents across organizations using an open protocol. You can give a partner curated natural language access to your data without exposing your underlying code or proprietary logic. It's a complete rewrite of the enterprise stack. But how does this translate to the financial reality of a company trying to survive the AI transition? Let's talk about that $188 billion valuation and why Databricks is preaching valuemaxxing. Let's put that $188 billion figure into perspective. This isn't just a valuation bump, it's a massive financial power play. Databricks has signed a term sheet for a strategic funding round led by Coatue, set to close later this summer. In a market where a lot of AI startups are quietly looking for soft landings or getting absorbed by tech giants, Databricks is raising capital at a scale that cements them as an absolute sovereign state in the enterprise AI ecosystem. But look past the headline number. Why now? And why do they need this cash? It makes back to what Ali Ghodsi calls the transition from tokenmaxxing to valuemaxxing. If you're a CFO, this is your reality check. For the last 2 years, companies have been throwing money at the wall, using the most expensive, massive frontier models to do basic mundane tasks, like summarizing a meeting or parsing a simple database table. It's the equivalent of hiring a Nobel laureate to do data entry. It's wildly inefficient, and the bill always comes due. Ghotsi's point is that enterprises cannot afford to be locked into a single expensive model. The only sustainable way forward is multi-AI routing. You need the freedom to choose the right, cost-effective model for the specific job, and you need to govern that choice dynamically. That is exactly where this new war chest is going. Databricks isn't just hoarding cash. They are funding a very specific, aggressive roadmap. First, they are doubling down on Unity AI Gateway. This is their multi-AI governance solution. And frankly, it's a cost control tool disguised as security. It's what allows you to route queries to cheaper, open source models when a lightweight task is requested, and only spin up the expensive frontier models when absolutely necessary. Second, they are pouring capital into scaling Genie, their AI coworker, and Lakebase, that serverless Postgres database we just talked about. And finally, expect to see a wave of acquisitions. Databricks has a history of buying up critical tech. Just look at their acquisition of Neon for serverless Postgres. And they are positioning themselves to swallow up more AI startups that have great tech but are running out of runway in this tight market. They are building an integrated end-to-end moat. But as any seasoned INT leader knows, with massive architectural capability comes massive administrative complexity.
And if you aren't paying attention to the plumbing, this new agentic world is going to break your existing security models.
Which brings us to some very unsexy but incredibly critical security overhauls hitting Unity Catalog this August. Privilege trap in Unity Catalog. Right now, if you grant someone the manage privilege on a schema or a table, they can't actually do anything with it unless they also have use catalog or use schema privileges on the parent containers. It's a built-in safety net. But on August 3rd, 2026, that safety net is being cut. Databricks is decoupling these privileges. After the update, manage grants will become active regardless of whether the user has parent usage privileges. If you've been hand-waving permissions in the past, perhaps granting broad managed rights to simplify delegation, thinking, it's fine, they don't have parent access anyway, those dormant permissions are about to wake up. Holders of those grants will suddenly gain full administrative control over those objects. You need to run an audit of your managed grants immediately, because what was once a harmless orphaned permission is about to become an active security vulnerability. And while you're auditing, we need to talk about workspace entitlements. This is a massive, fundamental shift in how users get access to your workspaces, and it is going to break legacy automation. When you added a user to a workspace, they automatically inherited basic entitlements, like workspace access and Databricks SQL access, from the system users group. It was easy, it was automatic, and from a security standpoint, it was incredibly lazy. Starting auto-enablement hitting workspaces as early as late July, that inheritance is dead. The system users group will have exactly 0 entitlements. Instead, you must grant entitlements explicitly to every single principal when you add them to a workspace. This allows you to bring in consumer-only users without automatically giving them authoring privileges. But the catch: if you manage your workspace entitlements through automation, like Terraform, Workspace SCIM APIs, or custom scripts, this change will break your pipelines. After the new behavior is enforced, any attempt to modify system group entitlements will fail. You must update your workflows to target standard account groups instead. To prevent immediate chaos, Databricks will automatically migrate your existing users to a workspace local clone group. Name something like users clone with a timestamp. But beware. If your SCIM sync is configured to automatically delete unrecognized groups, it might see this new clone group, delete it, and instantly strip all entitlements from your active users. You need to update your SCIM configuration to preserve that clone group before the migration hits. Forensic. Up. Lakebase is getting a major infrastructure upgrade. Databricks is automatically transitioning all Lakebase provisioned instances to the autoscaling platform. The Greek: you get scale to 0 pricing, which is going to dramatically lower your compute costs on idle databases, alongside features like database branching and point-in-time restore. The bad news is a potential networking gotcha. Each upgraded instance is getting a new regional connection string. If you are using Private Link and connecting to Lakebase from outside the Databricks workspace, you must configure inbound Private Link to use this new regional connection string, or your performance-intensive services will lose their optimized ingress. The old connection strings will still work, but they won't route through the optimized path. Finally, there are a few other ticking time bombs in this release cycle that you need to defuse. Workspace object permissions, like access to notebooks, queries, and dashboards, will soon be inherited from all account groups, not just the ones directly assigned to the workspace. Just like the manage change, this will reactivate orphaned permissions. If a contractors group was removed from a workspace but still has edit rights on a folder, any account-level member of that contractors group will suddenly regain access. Databricks has provided an orphan permissions analysis notebook to help you find these. Run it. If you use declarative automation bundles, take note. On July 24th, 2026, they will default to the direct deployment engine instead of the Terraform deployment engine. The Terraform engine is being deprecated and will eventually be removed entirely, so start migrating your bundles now. Continuous jobs and pipelines are getting a state management overhaul in early August. The behavior is becoming much more rigid. For example, pausing a continuous job will now automatically cancel the active run, and stopping an active run will pause the job. If you have custom orchestration scripts that rely on the old loose behavior, they are going to break. And lastly, the default behavior for deleting a Unity catalog pipeline is changing. Currently, deleting a pipeline cascades and deletes all associated materialized views and streaming tables. Soon, those tables will be retained by default, just left inactive. If your cleanup scripts expect those tables to vanish, you need to explicitly update your code to set the cascade parameter to true. It's a lot of Agentic Era. Clean plumbing is the difference between a highly efficient AI workforce and a security and financial disaster. And speaking of plumbing, let's look at the plumbing of the web itself for a second. If you look at some of the technical write-ups coming out of the summit, like Adepto's breakdown of these new features, you'll notice a hilarious irony. While we are busy building autonomous AI agents and serverless databases, the actual delivery mechanisms of these insights are still choked with legacy web tracking. We're talking about secure rollout tokens, YouTube player preference cookies, and account-based marketing trackers like LFA. It's a stark reminder that while we are dreaming of a frictionless agentic future, the actual infrastructure we rely on day to day is still incredibly messy. But let's look past the marketing pixels and focus on the practical reality of what integrators are seeing on the ground with these new features. When you strip away the summit hype, the real challenge isn't just turning these features on. It's the integration depth. Keep the transition to Lakebase and serverless micro apps. For an integration partner or an internal platform team, the promise of vibe coding sounds like a dream. But the reality of deploying these features means dealing with the friction of legacy enterprise environments. You aren't building in a vacuum. You are trying to hook up Genie Ontology to databases that have 30 years of bad schemas, duplicate tables, and undocumented columns. No matter how smart your self-improving semantic brain is, if your underlying data is a toxic waste dump, your AI agents are still going to struggle. The real work of the agentic era isn't actually writing code anymore. It's data hygiene. If you don't clean up your data house, no amount of serverless infrastructure is going to save you. And speaking of data hygiene, let's look at the exact mechanics of that manage privilege overhaul I mentioned earlier. This isn't just a minor patch, it's a fundamental shift in how Databricks conceptualizes administrative control. And you need to understand the precise math of this change before August 3rd. To understand why Databricks is doing this, you have to look at how they are trying to align the manage privilege with actual object ownership. Historically, if you owned a table, you could manage its permissions without needing explicit usage rights on the table itself. But if you were just granted the manage privilege, you were treated like a second-class citizen. You still needed the specific usage privilege on that exact object to do your job. Databricks is turning manage into ownership light. Exact before and after. Under the old rules, if you wanted a security admin to manage a specific schema, they needed 3 things. Use catalog on the parent catalog, use schema on the schema, and the manage privilege on that schema. That middle requirement drops away. To manage that schema, they will only need use catalog on the parent container, plus manage on the schema itself.
They do not need use schema.
The same logic applies all the way down the inheritance chain. If you want someone to manage a specific table, view, volume, or external location, they will no longer need usage privileges on that specific target object. They only need usage privileges on the parent catalog and schema, plus manage on the target itself. A massive win for the principle of least privilege. It finally decouples the right to govern data from the right to see data. You can now delegate the task of altering permissions, transferring ownership, or deleting stale tables to a service principal or a compliance officer, without accidentally granting them read access to the sensitive payroll data inside those tables. But in practice, if your existing security architecture relies on security through obscurity, meaning you granted broad manage rights because you knew the lack of usage privileges would act as a blocker, you are in trouble. On August 3rd, those blockades disappear. You're actually your Unity Catalog information schema today. Look for any principal that holds a manage grant on an object where they do not also hold the corresponding usage grant. If that access wasn't intended to be active, revoke the manage privilege immediately. Because come August, Databricks is going to take off the training wheels, and those latent permissions will become live admin rights. Now, if you think this kind of rigorous data hygiene and T departments, you are missing the bigger financial picture. The people with the deepest pockets on Wall Street are paying very close attention. Case in point, Clearlake Capital Group, to build what they are calling the investment firm of the future. And if you know anything about private equity, you know they do not buy into tech hype unless there is a very clear, very lucrative path to ROI. Medically, private equity has run on gut instinct, relationship networks, and massive, highly fragile Excel spreadsheets. But the era of cheap debt, where you could buy a company, slash headcount, and flip it for a quick profit, is over. Today, winning in private equity is about operational value creation. You have to actually make the companies you buy run more efficiently. That is why Clearlake is building their day one to inject AI directly into their investment thesis and portfolio management. We are talking about a shift from static reactive reporting to active predictive market intelligence. Instead of waiting for quarterly financial decks to trickle in from portfolio companies, Clearlake is positioning themselves to ingest real-time operational data, supply chain metrics, and customer sentiment across their entire portfolio into a single governed lakehouse. When they evaluate a target acquisition, they aren't just looking at backward-looking EBITDA on a slide. They can deploy AI agents to run predictive models against unstructured market data, identifying hidden operational bottlenecks or pricing inefficiencies before they even sign the term sheet. Once they own the company, they can immediately plug it into this unified data platform to drive automated cost optimization and revenue forecasting. This is the real-world realization of the agentic operating system. When the smartest, most calculating money in the room stops looking at AI as a novelty and starts embedding it into their core investment engine, the debate over whether this technology is just a bubble is officially over. They are building a moat, and they are using Databricks to dig it. And that brings us to the bottom line of this entire summit. If you step back and look at the sheer scale of these announcements, from the $188 billion valuation to the death of ETL, 3 massive, unavoidable truths emerge for anyone trying to navigate this transition. Context is the ultimate moat. The raw AI models themselves are rapidly becoming commodities. It doesn't matter if you are using the latest frontier model or a lightweight open source alternative. The model is only as smart as the data it can access. The organizations that win this transition won't be the ones with the biggest compute budgets. They'll be the ones that successfully map their proprietary, messy business logic into a live, unified semantic layer, like Genie Ontology. If your AI doesn't understand your specific business definitions, it's just a very expensive hallucination engine. The convergence of transactional and analytical data is no longer a future roadmap item. It is here. The wall between OLTP and OLAP has officially crumbled. With architectures like Lakebase and LTAP, the era of building, maintaining, and constantly troubleshooting complex, fragile ETL pipelines is over. If you are still designing systems that copy, move, and duplicate data just to analyze it, you are actively building legacy technology. It is time to simplify. And finally, governance is your only real cost control. As we move headfirst into the agentic era, deploying autonomous agents without strict guardrails is a recipe for financial disaster. An unmonitored agent running recursive loops on an expensive model will drain your cloud budget faster than any rogue query ever could. Tools like Unity AI Gateway and strict privilege controls aren't just bureaucratic compliance checkboxes anymore. They are survival tools for your bottom line. So do yourself a favor before you log off today. Don't just get excited about the flashy AI agents and SpaceX partnerships. Go log into your console, run that orphaned permissions analysis notebook, and audit those managed privileges before the August 3rd deadline hits. Your security team and your budget will thank you. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.